Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here, and I'm going to be talking about The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. I love this cover, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of cool. I actually didn't know anything about this series, and I saw someone post, I think it was like a collector's edition, where they had like all these sea monsters and stuff across the, oh, now I can't think of what it's called, but the edges. There we go. And I was like, I don't know what this series is, but I need to read it, and I am so glad I did. And it says, for generations, the fleets of the 100 Isles have built their ships from the bones of ancient dragons to fight an endless war. The dragons disappeared, but the battles for supremacy persisted. Now the first dragon in centuries has been spotted in far-off waters, and both sides see a chance to shift the balance of power in their favor, because whoever catches it will win not only glory, but the war. This series is really dark. I'm not gonna lie, this series was a lot darker than I expected. The reason they are hunting these dragons is because the dragons, are massive, and they're also more like huge sea serpents. Everything in this book revolves around the sea, which I think is really cool, and I think it's something that's not really done enough in fantasy. It definitely kind of gives a little bit of a Waterworld vibe in that essentially all the continents are more like just large islands. They're not continents the way that we think of continents. So everyone is constantly fighting each other for resources. So it definitely also kind of gives this a little bit of a dystopian vibe, which I think gets even worse when we learn about the more authoritarian forms of government that rule all these islands, that not only force people to fight in the ocean, but also decide like if they ever get to have kids, stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot darker than I expected. This book follows Lucky Mies and Joran Turner. Joran starts as like the captain of the boat in the beginning, and then Mies takes it. They are both on what is called a black ship, which is kind of like, I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. It's not a prison, so to speak, but it's like if you face crimes or, someone says something bad against you or you have nowhere else to go, you can get put on these black ships and you basically serve until you die on these ships as like essentially soldiers that aren't good enough or, broke too many rules to be in the actual fleet for whatever country they're fighting for. It's also the way that they describe the ships is pretty horrific, since they are all essentially made out of like bones, and there's people that shape the bones. They also talk about these lights, and each ship kind of has one. Some ships have multiple. It definitely has something to do with the magic. It doesn't get described too much in the first book. I'm hoping they go into more detail in the second when I start that one, because that also gave it a it just made it a lot darker, because we do find out that the way these lights are made for the ships, in part of making bone ships, does require like sacrificing kids. Now that being said, it doesn't really describe why that's necessary or what it does, just like the magic of the golems, I forget how they pronounce it, but it's they're like these bird people that make the wind that moves the ship. Their magic, they can make a ship go faster, they can make a ship go slower. There also doesn't seem to be cannons in this book or in this series. They kind of describe almost, it's like giant harpoons or catapults, like trebuchets that they're using to fight ship battles, and then of course bows, arrows, hand axes, swords, all the good pirate stuff. There is a lot of action in this book, so if you're looking for a slow burn read, this is not it. I mean, they dive right into it, and of course I love that, so I'm all into it. Plus I love all the nautical stuff. And once again, this book, I guess I should describe more of the plot. Basically, Lucky Mies, we don't really know 100% why. It's kind of described that it was maybe due to some sort of failure on her part, or some sort of perceived failure in which she was blamed by enemies within the fleet. and assigned to a black ship. She is not someone who would normally be assigned to such because her mother is one of the high-ranking government officials, and she was originally a captain in the fleet. Joran Turner was put on a black ship. He fought a duel and was basically said that he cheated, which is against the law, so he got assigned to a black ship. I don't want to spoil too much of that because it is a big part of the story. In the beginning, the Tide Child is not a good ship. Obviously, it being a black ship already has some negative stereotypes about it within this world. It's already seen as being, inferior compared to the rest of the fleet. But Joran just doesn't really know how to be a captain, and so the ship's maintenance and staffing and, even just like a central crew being where they should be within the ship, it's none of it's been assigned. The Golem hasn't left its room since he's become captain. So basically everything that could go wrong on the ship has gone wrong, and it's kind of all of his fault. So right away, Mies sets about to fixing all that and kind of restoring some sense of pride to the people that run on the ship. Now, there aren't a lot of traditional, naval terms being thrown around in here, I guess. Part of the world building that I think is done really well in this book is the fact that right away all the ranks and the terms for even there's not so much sailors, they're deck children, right? It's all part of the world building, and it's done in such a way that you're in it immediately, and it really doesn't explain a whole lot. I mean, there is an appendix at the end, but I think it's kind of in this book's favor that it doesn't, because once again, you do have to, it makes, I don't know, I feel like it makes it more memorable when the terms are being thrown out, the deck keepers and the captain of the ship isn't a captain, it's the shipwife. So I thought that was all really cool, and it also kind of helps to drive home the fact that not only is this kind of a military navy, it's also, most navies I guess are militaries, but this is also part of their religion and how they worship the hag, which, I don't know a lot about how they're going to set up hags in this series, but I know hags from D&D, and they're not exactly fun and cuddly. And I imagine that also definitely has a lot to do with why their religion is so dark, and that the reason that they take and sacrifice kids to fuel these corpse lights, which I really want to know what their purpose is and what they do. I think it has something to do with the fog, but we're not really clear on what the fog is. Now, there is a subplot that comes out that ends up being the main plot. As Joran Turner, Twiner, learns more about Lucky Mies, he kind of gets drawn into a conspiracy that Mies has with some other people to get this last sea dragon. So essentially, their thought process is if they can kill this sea dragon before any other continent gets it, then they'll run out of bones, and if they run out of bones, they can't make any more ships, and thus, the centuries-long conflict from their isles and all the other isles will be ended because no one will be able to make boats or bone ships, and if no one can make bone ships, no one can have bone ship wars. And to do this, they have to take it somewhere where it's deep enough where if they kill it, the bones will sink too deep to the point where no one can dive. I'm not going to spoil too much more of what happens there, but I thought that was a really cool and really interesting plot, especially since how dark this book series is, kind of the world building is. I thought it was kind of cool that the main plot was that they wanted to end all the conflict altogether. And it also kind of gives hope to the people that are assigned to these black ships, because if there is no war, then there is no need for black ships. Of course, after reading the first book, and once again, it is a pretty dark series, I have a feeling that nothing is going to go as planned, and there isn't going to be a lot of happy endings here, but I am definitely willing to find that out. I also really like the fact that the ocean is completely terrifying in this book. You know, it describes a lot of different sea creatures that like to follow the ships, a lot of like giant lampreys and all just sorts of terrifying monstrosities that come from the deeps. And as someone that loves aquatic horror, I mean, all of that is right up my alley. So I did really enjoy this book. I'm excited to see what more the series is going to bring. Like I said, I want to know why the corpse lights require child sacrifices, and also what they do a little more. There's also a secret, a lot of the magic revolves around the golems, which are these bird creatures that summon wind. I think I already said that. But anyway, they're magic, and they're basically essentially harvested and assigned to ships. There's talk in the book there might be some sort of deal, but it's maybe hinted at that the golems aren't exactly going willingly to this, so yeah, that's going to be another interesting plot, I think, to see unwind. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. If you like aquatic horror, or you just want to do like a different take on fantasy, or you like the movie Waterworld, or even like, you know, maybe a dystopian, like some dystopian books, I think you'll really enjoy this series. It is action-packed. It does throw a lot at you at first. Like I said, like it doesn't hold your hand through the world building, which I actually really enjoy in this. Mostly because I feel like a lot of books fall in one or two camps when it comes to that. You know, some books just make it overly confusing, and some just kind of sprinkle it in as it goes. And I think this was more the sprinkle method, so it was much easier to grasp and figure things out without it being handed to you, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I like this book a lot. I'm excited to read the rest of the series. I don't know how this series, as someone that loves aquatic horror and fantasy and horror in general, I don't know how this like slipped from my radar for so long, but I am glad that someone posted a picture of their collector's editions on Instagram, because it led me here, and I really enjoyed this. Highly recommend reading this if you haven't. I'm definitely going to read the sequel, so that's where I'm at with it. Yeah, if you've read this series, I do believe it's the Tide Child Trilogy. Liked it, didn't like it, let me know in the comments below. If you know of any other kind of aquatic horror or fantasy series that revolve around the ocean that are kind of dark, I would definitely be interested in reading them, so also let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.